Good evening and welcome to the Pima County Treasurer Applicants Forum. I'm Barbara Becker from the League of Women Voters of Greater Tucson and your moderator for this evening's event. Assisting me this evening, also from the League of Women Voters of Greater Tucson, is our timekeeper, Sue DeArmond. We respectfully acknowledge that the League of Women Voters of Greater Tucson is on the land and territories of Indigenous people. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being the home to the Tohono and the Pasquayaqui people. Tonight, there are two applicants, Patti Davidson and Chris Ackerley, and due to time constraints, we will be limited on the number of questions that get formally asked. I'm going to apologize up front if we're unable to get to your question. I need to explain a few things about our process. The applicants have agreed to abide by our rules, and we ask the same of our audience. First, do not record or do a video of any or all of this forum. Second, you'll notice Ms. DeArmond raising signs. The signs are being held up to tell the speaker how much time they have left to speak. Should the candidate continue after the stop sign has been raised, I will interrupt them. It's so that we can ensure that everyone gets an equal opportunity to answer each question without interruption. Third, each applicant will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves and their platform, and 1.5 minutes or 90 seconds to respond to a question, and 2 minutes for a closing statement. We will rotate who goes first with each question. For those of you who have not used WebEx before, you can adjust how the form displays using the layout button at the top of the viewer. There are several options. Pick the one that you prefer most. To ask questions, there's a Q&A button on the right of your screen. You can type your questions in the Q&A to Clerk of the Board, and we will compile them to ask the panel members if time allows. You will be able to see your own question, but not those submitted by other members of the public. If you're joining by phone, unfortunately, you'll only be able to listen to the forum. You will not be able to submit questions. Now, let us begin the forum by each applicant telling us about themselves and why they're running for office. We'll start with Patti Davidson. Patti?
Thank you. My name is Patti Davidson. I've lived in Tucson for 35 years. I have a bachelor's degree in accounting and a master's degree in business administration. I retired from Pima County with 25 years of service, and during that time I was a supervisor in financial control and reporting for 3 years, working on the financial statements for the county. Then I worked as chief deputy treasurer under Beth for 15.5 years, and I ended up in the tax assembly division in the budget division for 6.5 years. In these positions, I developed working relationships with elected officials, county departments, investors, lawyers, title companies, and most importantly, with taxpayers. I'm looking forward to maybe helping because I've had experience in both investments and in the tax collection side, both of which are important parts of the treasurer's office. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Patti, thank you. Now, Chris?
Good evening, and thank you everybody who's joining us, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. When I was 7, if you had asked me what I wanted to do for a living, government funding and finance probably wouldn't have been at the top of the list, but then probably neither would have math teacher. And that's what I've spent the last 22 years doing. Most recently managing a math credit recovery program at Amphi High. But my career took a detour into politics when I realized that many of the decisions that affected my ability to do the job were made by elected officials. I got involved, and eventually I ended up getting elected to represent Southern Pima County and Santa Cruz County in the House of Representatives. After my term in office, went back to teaching, but about 3 years ago, Beth Ford, who has been our treasurer for almost 24 years now, approached me and asked me if I would consider joining her office and running for the position after she retired. Gave it consideration and took the challenge up. And so for the past 2 years, I have been learning how all of the various functions of the treasurer's office works and how all of the mechanics to make it all happen are all coordinated with each other. Beth said, is a math teacher. You can do the math. As a former representative, you understand the statutes and can handle the politics. I can teach you the accounting. And that's what we've done. And we've carefully planned how we might transition the office. Leadership change in an organization is always difficult, and it always presents challenges. In November, the voters will weigh in on whether I've made the case that I'm the best candidate for the job. But in the interim, I would humbly ask that the Board of Supervisors give some consideration to the planning we've done and appoint me to the position.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, I think it's time now to start the questions and answers. So let's begin. Chris will be the first to answer this one, and then we'll let Patti have her turn. Explain the essential duties of the treasurer's office and how you would undertake them.
That's a lot to fit into 90 seconds because it's a huge task. But obviously, everybody knows that we handle the tax collections for all of the different 80 plus jurisdictions in Pima County. But we also act as the bank for the county and many of those jurisdictions, including all of the school districts. That also includes not only keeping an eye on their cash flow, but investing that money and then accounting for it and then acting as a repository for information against which all of those jurisdictions reconcile their own internal accounting functions. It is a heavy responsibility, and I don't take it lightly. We manage on any given day between $1.5 billion and $2 billion in deposits. That money's invested, and in any given week, we will process anywhere from $100 million to $200 million in transactions.
Thank you. Patti, do you want me to repeat the question?
No, I think I've got it.
Okay.
Chris is correct. The two basic functions of the treasurer's office is property tax collection and then the investment of the money. And as I'm looking at how things have been done with the investments, it's a fairly conservative approach, and I would continue with that conservative approach that Beth has taken. And yes, it's important for the accounting staff who handles all of the maintaining the books there. It's important for them to know, to have a good rapport with all of the different taxing jurisdictions, so that if they have any needs, you have to stay on top of any cash flow issues that they may have. The other side is the tax collection, which sometimes sort of gets overlooked, but that's where the money's coming in. And it's really important to get the collections in timely and efficiently. Preferably, once a payment comes in, it should be processed within 24 to 48 hours. And that would be a goal that I would set. And the other aspect with the property tax collections is the delinquent taxes, because everyone, there's always going to have people who have issues and may go delinquent, but the state has a process in place to by selling property tax liens, and this way investors come in, provide thank you. Lost my time.
Thank you. I want to again remind the audience that to type their question on the Q&A and address it to the clerk of the board. Okay, here's the second question, and we'll start with Patti this time. Describe your experiences and qualifications that have prepared you to be county treasurer.
Okay, well, I did serve under Beth for 15 and a half years as the chief deputy treasurer. And in that position, obviously, I worked in every aspect of the office, I worked with the accounting staff. I worked with the clerical staff. I worked with the IT staff, and and I also was very involved in other aspects of the office, including doing treasurer deeds, working on bankruptcy cases where, through the county attorney, we had to coordinate that, working with outside law firms on the treasurer deeds, and a variety of tasks. So those 15 and a half years obviously give me a lot. I know the workings of the office. I've been there, done that. And I've also, when I went to tax assembly after that, I worked on preparing the tax statements, calculating the taxes, working with the assessor to get the valuations needed to calculate the taxes, and monitoring legislation that might affect whether it be the treasurer, the county, the assessor, to make sure that the taxes were calculated properly.
Thank you. Chris, do I need to repeat the question?
No, I think I got it. Thank you.
Okay.
So Patty and I both have had the same title within the office. And that title is statutory, so that there is someone in the office who has the authority to carry on the functions of the office in the event that the elected officer is unavailable for whatever reason. But the functions and the daily functions and duties assigned to that position vary dramatically based upon the structure of the office at the time. Beth and I, Beth recruited me to come in to specifically run the office. So I have progressively taken over management, not just interacted with, but progressively taken over management of every aspect of the office. Additionally, I have been active outside of the office, engaged with the Treasurers Association, with all of the treasurers across the county. Ms. Davidson mentioned legislation. There are currently 2 bills that directly impact the functions of this office, and I have been actively engaged with legislators this session, helping, for lack of a better term, guide those bills.
Thank you. Okay. Again, I remind you to type your questions on Q&A to the clerk of the board. What do you believe are the current challenges and opportunities for improvement of the office? Chris.
So our biggest current challenges are IT related. We are currently in the midst of refreshing and updating the servers within our office. In addition, the county is undergoing an ERP conversion. That stands for Enterprise Resource Program, but it's the entire backbone of the county's financial system. Additionally, the school's office, the school superintendent's office, is going through a similar ERP conversion. I have been engaged in those conversations, working closely with our IT department to make sure that those integrations are on track and are working. It is rather hefty projects, and anybody associated with it knows that we are running a little bit behind schedule. The county is on their end, and the school superintendent is on their end, mostly due to difficulties with the integrations, which means that when they go live in July, the county is going to be under pressure to modify its business practices in real time as we learn to use these new systems. Well, I appreciate Patti has experience with the county finances and within the office. The reality is, in the past decade, the systems have radically changed. And somebody is going to need to be actively engaged and up to speed on those integrations when they occur.
Thank you, Chris. Now, Patti. We can't, you're muted. Here.
Okay, thank you. I was aware that they're going to a new ERP system for the county, and just so that you'll know, it's not like I haven't had experience. The county did that quite a few years ago, went to a new system, and I was involved in making sure that the treasurer was able to interface with that system then. So it's not something that's unfamiliar to me, and I don't see that that would be a problem at all. One of the opportunities in the office, I guess you say challenge opportunity, is the importance of the customer service in the treasurer's office. You know, like I say, you're dealing with the taxpayers, and I feel like the staff answering the phone calls really needs to have a really good knowledge of the tax system and the you know, whatever they can do to help a taxpayer so that they understand it better. And one of the things that I would be looking to do is develop a little bit of a training program for that, so that they have a better knowledge. No, they don't need to know how to exactly calculate taxes, but they should be able to calculate a base tax. And but other than that, you know, the office does run fairly smoothly, and I don't see a problem with the integration with the county system.
Thank you. Okay, we ask that any question asked is something that can be directed to both candidates, and that you type your question to the clerk of the board. Okay, what are your beliefs regarding constituent services, and how will you ensure the office staff provides excellent service? Patti?
Okay, well, I sort of already addressed that, but as I said, you know, there's it's a small staff. There are not a lot of people on the treasurer's staff, and their work is, especially for those who take care of all the tax payments, their work is cyclical. So they get hit at delinquent tax time when the tax bills first go out. Any of the due dates, they get swamped with calls. And so, you know, it's important that they're trained to be able to answer them as quickly and efficiently and correctly as possible. And that's one of the things I know when I was in tax assembly. Beth asked that I headed up the property tax helpline that the county manages. And when it would get real busy, we could go in and, you know, if they had 30 phone calls waiting, we could go in and pick up phone calls for them. So I had 4 of us that were doing that. So that does help. So it's just real important that you have coordination with other departments to get that done properly. And in addition, I think, you know, additional training for the staff would be helpful. And I do know that sometimes the accounting staff does help with the phones, which is helpful also.
Thank you. Chris?
I do want to give out a big shout out to our current staff. There is always room for improvement. There is no doubt. And believe me, as we've looked at transitioning the office, we've looked at how we might restructure that and better address the needs. Obviously, one of the key things that plays into this is interim, and the idea of upsetting the entire apple cart in advance of election is probably not the wisest move, but we can definitely improve on some areas. But I do want to give a shout out to our staff. The reality is when somebody is calling our office, it's usually not their best day, because they're usually calling about tax issues, and that's never anybody's most joyous occasions. So we do take that into consideration, and I do have to commend the patience of our staff as they're dealing with those issues.
Well, thank you both. Okay. The second half tax collections will be coming in over the next few months, totaling $100 million more or less. What would you do with the money collected? And we'll start with Chris.
So we are in a very interesting period historically. The yield curve has been inverted. That's financial geek speak for the fact that it is more advantageous to keep money in short-term investments than it is in long-term investments. In fact, just yesterday, you know, the return on treasury yields moved up 20 basis points. Again, not to get into finance geek speak, but and that was a significant move. So we are coming up on the second half of tax where we have a big influx of money. In addition, we have some schools that are issuing some very large bonds. Most of what we invest in is carefully dictated by statute, at least the type of investments that we can do. But as that money comes in, it is likely that we will take a very conservative stance and say we're going to remain very short on our maturities, right? And be carefully watching all of the expectations is when to convert those to a little bit longer term maturities. And then do keep in mind, right? Statute allows us to go 5 years out. But the reality is, if we have money that we don't need for 5 years, we've collected too much of your money. So the idea is to keep it safe, liquid, and maximize the return.
Okay. Patty.
Hi again. Chris said it well, and I agree with the conservative approach to the investing. I know Beth has, the last time she actually really invested in any long-term issues was back in 22. So, and that falls in line with the market, what the rates are. And I firmly believe that that's a good path to take, because it's our job to secure the money, make sure that it's invested properly, and make as much as we can with at the least risk. And the other thing that I would add to it is that you can always, you have to balance with all this money coming in, you have to balance what your monthly cash flows, what you anticipate them to be. That's why for the schools and all of that, it is a good thing to know. And you have to work closely with the county in case there's an unexpected cash flow coming up that we need to have some liquidity. And you can notice that Beth keeps a lot in the LGIP, which is the local government investment pool. And that's been giving a decent rate. I think it's 5.13, something like that. It's not bad. And that way you have liquidity, and you can always, if something comes up, you can get the money out without having to sell investments. So I would pretty much continue doing that, because you do want to be conservative in that aspect.
Thank you. Reminder, type your questions on the Q&A to the clerk of the board. Now, next question. How would you make sure you have good working relationships with the other county departments? And we'll start with Patty.
Oh, to make sure. The staff, obviously, I've worked with all different areas. I've worked with county attorney, the sheriff's department, the assessor's office. I've worked with all different ones, and the staff needs to be able to know who they need to contact, and and just be open to those departments if they have issues, to promptly address any issues they might have. Typically there aren't that many issues, but that would be the best thing. The staff has to have a good rapport with the other departments, and I believe that the treasurer's staff does have a really good rapport with all of the departments, and I don't think that's a problem for them right now, but you would just continue to keep that contact going.
Thank you.
Communication is the key. As I have been engaged in the business of the treasurer's office, interacting with the School Business Officials Association, interacting with the Arizona Treasurers Association, and all of the other 14 treasurers from around the state, and going back to my time in the legislature, government really is a relational business, and it is important to keep those relationships and foster those relationships, and find ways that, although we might disagree on some political issues, to work collaboratively to get the business of government done the most effectively we can to be good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars.
Hey, thank you. We have two questions that have come in that were directed to only one individual, so we are unable to ask those questions. So we only have one more question left unless there's a flood of questions on the Q&A, and we are hoping for that because we do have time. So I'm going to start with Chris. Why are you the best candidate for this position?
So I believe that I am the best candidate for this position because Beth, when she recruited me with the intention of running. We have done a considerable amount of planning over the course of the last 2 years, how that transition would occur. It has not been at all a secret that Beth was not seeking another term and that she was going to retire, and most likely before the end of the term. So we have given it a careful amount of consideration. As I said, the voters will get to decide in November whether I am made the case that I'm the best candidate for the job, but we have done a considerable amount of planning for the position. I have been learning and observing with the intention of running for the office and continuing and expanding upon the work that Beth has done to improve the systems of the office. To that extent, since Mrs. Davidson was Chief Deputy Treasurer, the systems, the way this office is structured and run has significantly changed. And I think that I am the best candidate to maintain the continuity of those operations until a new treasurer, hopefully myself, is elected and can make long-range plans for the future.
Thank you. Patti.
Beth, actually, when Beth first won election, she recruited me, and I did stay with her for 15 and a half years. It's a long time. And, when we first started, she had certain goals she wanted to do, and I helped her accomplish those in that time. Actually, most of them were done within the first 2 years, like 95% of it. And the treasurer's office holds a special place in my heart. I love the work that goes on in the office. I like the idea of doing something for taxpayers and working with the other county departments. And I know best policies have changed and some of the things have changed, but the bare bone structure of the office and of what the treasurer has to do has not really changed. And I don't think that I would have any issue at all. And I believe that my whole goal is to not go in and change everything. I believe you want it to be a smooth transition, and my goal would be to go in there and keep the continuity of the office. And when the newly elected treasurer comes in, to work with that treasurer before January 1st so that they have an opportunity to get acclimated and make it a smooth transition to the new treasurer. So I believe that I can do that, and I would do a good job for the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Patti. And y'all are in luck. We have another question. Okay. Chris will start. No, Patti will start with this. What are the limitations to processing notice of claim or notice of error? Do I need to repeat that?
The limitations.
Yeah, what are the limitations to processing notice of claim or notice of error?
The notice of claim, so it's sort of involved, but basically the assessor, if they actually value your property, let's say they don't give you your primary residence, they classify it as rental. Well, your taxes are going to be a little higher as rental because you don't get the state aid to education tax credit. So the taxpayer has the option to file a notice of claim, and they can go back as far as 3 years. And those are processed through the clerk's board, and it goes through to, once it's approved, if it's valid, it goes through to the treasurer to do the correction and properly classify the piece of property. Um, so that's it,
Okay.
basics.
Do I need to repeat the question?
No, I think I got it. Thank you.
Okay.
So yes, a good chunk of what our office processes is tax roll corrections that result as either the assessor making a correction when they discover an error, or the homeowner contesting the evaluation or the class, the use class of a property. The limitation that you asked for is that if it is a notice of error and the property owner does not contest the change in valuation, the limitation is that it can't raise their taxes for the currently billed year. And so this is or previous years. So it only really works in one direction. It goes prospectively forward. It doesn't go backwards unless that due to the error or due to the correction, the taxpayer is owed money.
Thank you. Now it's your turn to start out. Name 2 things that if they went wrong would harm the community.
This is easy. The 2 most important things we do is every Wednesday we process payroll, either for the county or the alternate Wednesday, the school payrolls. Payroll doesn't go out, that's going to be a problem. The other huge thing, and the one that requires everybody's eyes on the office on, is debt service. We service the debt, the repayment of the interest and principal on the bonds that school districts and fire districts issue, and for that matter, some of the stuff in the county as well. And if you miss a debt payment, if you miss an interest payment, that negatively affects their bond rating and will cost the taxpayers money in the end. So those are the 2 biggest crucial things that we have all hands on deck for.
Thank you. Patti.
I will agree with Chris on that. That is, especially with the handling the payments for the payroll for the county and for the schools. That is a really big deal. But I would also say that, something that could be very detrimental is if we don't get taxes processed promptly to get the money in there, then it's going to affect the cash flow for the county and maybe the other school districts. So it's just really important to get that money into the bank. And the other thing I think is if they're not paying attention closely to the monthly requirements, it would be detrimental to the school districts or to the county if we didn't have enough liquid assets to cover those payments that need to go out. But otherwise, yes, the payments for this payroll are tremendous because that's what keeps the county going, right? So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Patti, and you're up next. How will you ensure that your employees stay engaged during this transition, given the crossover of the ERP and the tax collections coming up?
Well, I'm assuming that, especially the accounting staff is going to be more responsible for dealing with the transition of the ERP. And so hopefully, and I'm assuming, like I said, that they've already been working on that, and it should go smoothly because she's got a good accounting staff and they work well with the main Pima County finance. And then what was the other part of the question?
The ERP and the tax collections coming up.
The tax collections. How to keep them motivated, basically. I always try to challenge them to get the main thing is to get the payments in as quickly as possible, to get them processed and to be on top of it. And it's, just encouraging them, having them take pride in their work, which I know they do, but giving them, just giving them the incentive.
She knows.
Okay. Chris?
Well, motivating people to do math problems has pretty much been my life's work. So I like to think I've had some success with it. I really, again, got to commend our staff for their work, particularly the IT staff and the senior accounting staff, for engaging and being responsible for all of the challenges that implementing these new ERP processes are concerned. However, ultimately, the success or the failure of those projects rests on leadership, both at the county level, within the treasurer's office, and within the school's office. So we cannot discount the need to have a full understanding of the scope of those projects, as they will affect almost every corner of the county. And so again, I want to commend the staff. We have been working well on it for the last couple of, well, actually, it's almost been a year now, maybe even more than that, maybe a year and a half. And I fully expect that to continue.
Okay, thank you. Now you get to start this with this question. What would you do for a district if they ran out of cash to pay for their current obligations?
Who leads off the question?
What would you do for a district if they ran out of cash to pay for their current obligations?
I assuming I'm going first on this question. Yes. So this is not an uncommon occurrence, especially since the legislature, in their wisdom, many, many moons back, decided to roll over the school equalization payments at the last quarter of the fiscal year. And so districts often at the end of the school year operate with a negative cash balance. There are three avenues under statute. We can establish lines of credit for them. They could, in a sense, issue an anticipatory tax note. In other words, try to sell a bond based upon future tax collections for the year. But both of those mechanisms are very costly for the jurisdictions involved. And so the third option, and it's the option that we use, is an option called registering warrants. In a sense, when a jurisdiction issues a check, it's actually called a warrant, that check becomes, in a sense, a promissory note. And then when we accept and make payment on that warrant, right, if the jurisdiction doesn't have the funds, we can in a sense convert that into an investment. And the way we work this is basically the interest the school district or the fire district pays upon that warrant is the same interest that they otherwise would have been earning if their cash account was in the positive.
Thank you. Patti?
Okay, Chris is correct. I can't really go any further in that, except that he is correct. It is mandated by statute, and those are the options that are available. And for the most part, yes, what they will choose to do, especially the schools, will basically use those quote registered warrants as an investment. And so the county basically lends the money to them to make the payments on those warrants and charges them interest accordingly. So those are the three methods of covering shortfalls.
Well, thank you. Now, the next question. How important is customer service in the treasurer's office?
It is so important. It's the one piece that sometimes could get overlooked. As I said, the treasurer's office deals with a lot of phone calls, and whether it's taxpayers or even the accounting department with other departments getting a hold of them. There's so much going on, but the biggest thing is the taxpayers. That's who we work for, and you want to make their, as Chris said, usually they're not happy when they call. And so the whole point is trying to ease it for them, explain to them what's gone on, what their options are, and give them the best advice and just answer any questions that they have. So even though the investments are so important from the treasurer's office perspective, the face of the office is the customer service, and that's the face of the treasurer too. So it's very important in the whole scheme of things.
Thank you. Chris?
I would concur that customer service is very, very important. As I mentioned before, people call when there's a problem, not when everything ran smoothly. And one of the things that we have to do is we have to very calmly and compassionately explain to them what their options are and get across to them. We don't set their taxes in the treasurer's office. And statutorily, we don't get to wave a magic wand and say, oh, yes, you're going under a hard time, or things got confusing, or something went awry when you sold your property, and we can magically make this all go away. Statutorily, we do not have that authority. And so we have to calmly explain to them what their options are. One of the things that has gotten much better in the 2 years that I have been here is coordination between our office and the assessor's office. Oftentimes, customers don't understand what is our responsibility and jurisdiction and what we have control over, and what the assessor's office has jurisdiction and control over. And the better coordination between those two offices, the more pleasant the experience is for the taxpayer.
Thank you. Okay, so you'll get to start out this one. And it sort of leads, the last question sort of lead in. What is the structure of the present structure of the treasurer's office, and is there any way that you would change that?
We essentially operate with 3 departments. We have a tax collection department, an accounting department, and an IT department. As has been mentioned, we are a very lean staff for the volume of money and transactions that we process, the investments that we manage, and quite frankly, the payments that we process. I have got to give kudos to Beth for maintaining a very lean ship. What we have done over the past 2 years, and what I envision continuing, should I be fortunate enough to win the election, is restructure the office so that the management positions in each one of the 3 departments have a little bit more diversified responsibility to account for some overlap of abilities, and then also provide for a better overall integrated analysis of how we conduct that business to manage efficiencies, especially with the implementation of the new ERP, especially with the advances in automation that are available and are coming available. And with that, I see that my time is up.
Okay, thank you. Patti?
Okay, well, basically, the structure of the office has not changed a whole lot since I was there. As he said, you do have your accounting staff with the investments, you have your property tax collection, and you have your information technology department. So they all work together well. And as I said, I wouldn't want to and this is an interim position. This is not, it's only going to last through December. So I personally don't think that that position that I should be going in and making huge major changes. There's, yeah, you can tweak some things, but my policy would be to sort of keep it as is and address any problems that come up as as you go along. But I don't think that you should go in and make major changes because it is just an interim position and it's just to ensure the continuity of the office until a newly elected treasurer comes in.
Right, thank you. Well, it's time for y'all to make your closing statements. So we'll start with you, Patti.
Okay. Thank you. I look forward to the opportunity to serve as Pima County Treasurer. As I said, would like to ensure the continuity of the office and make a smooth transition to the new treasurer as he or she comes in. And all of my 15 and a half years in the treasurer's office has given me the knowledge that makes me a good choice for this office. And and with that, I've gotten all aspects, and my other positions have given me even more knowledge, which would be beneficial. So I look forward to having the opportunity, and I want to thank the Board of Supervisors for giving me that opportunity to apply, and thank the League of Women Voters for hosting the forum tonight. Thank you.
Yeah. Chris.
Thank you, and I too want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting the forum. There has been some commentary in the press about whether or not someone who is running for the office should be appointed to fill a vacancy. But that is true, I believe, of representative positions. But this is not a representative position. This is an administrative position. The functions that we do in the office carry out the business of the county. And so I believe that I am the best person to maintain the continuity of operations with an eye towards planning to the future. If be the will of the voters and I am elected the next treasurer, if not, then the office should be in good shape for the next treasurer to take over. Beth and I have been very clear about our intentions from the beginning. We've put a lot of planning into how the office is structured and how it might be structured in the future. And again, I humbly ask the board to respect that those efforts on the part of myself, part of Beth, and on part of my staff, and not my staff, but the treasurer's staff, because they have put considerable amount of energy into it as well. And to respect those and ask them to appoint me as the interim treasurer until the election. And I'm excited and look forward to that opportunity.
Well, thank you to our applicants for an outstanding forum, and thank you to members of the audience for joining us tonight. The League of Women Voters of Greater Tucson is an all-volunteer organization that is committed to educating and assisting the public in a nonpartisan way to understand issues and candidates, or in this case, applicants. Thank you for a good forum, and good evening.